The show the public has demanded. Reached into my pocket, found 320s and a 10. Feels so good, feeling good again. Yes, I am JP Heath. Welcome back on this edition of the Texas Porch. Just had that Robert Earl song in the noggin, and I was just listening, so I had to offload that. But we'll always give you a good Texas howdy here on the Texas Porch. Howdy to podcast Josh. Lamar pointed out on our group text today when I said, Josh and I are going solo. He's like, well, that's not exactly solo. So I guess it's a duo of some sort.
Yeah, you can't have a solo with two people. That would be... I'd assume if you ever have a solo podcast, it'll be the JP solo podcast, unless you want to go crazy with something. But
yeah. Little background info is that when this whole thing started, aka the Texas Porch, is that it was originally an idea, and you might have remembered this from a previous episode, but I had pestered Josh for a couple of years about doing a radio program, which it still could be. Who knows? Advanced tease there. But also, what we started out as an idea, getting tacos at our third-rate taco joint, it's blossomed into tens and tens and dozens of people listening to, Josh. I think we're doing a good job from our duct-taped up seat when we discuss this a couple times a week, way back when.
Yeah, how long have we been discussing this? Since 5 years or something? Possibly longer?
I think legitimately 3, because...
Okay.
Yeah. This specific idea, as I learn how to talk, legitimately 3. But anyway, more for that fun talk later. But first off, if you can rate us, that helps us out on Apple, the Texas Porch, rating us 5 stars, leaving us a review is a big help. You can follow us on social media. We are with the times, Twitter and Facebook, Texas Porch Pod as well. But in case you did not know...
Your attention, please, ladies and gentlemen. It is baseball time in Texas.
Oh, does that get you excited or what? Finally, we have at least an agreement to have Major League Baseball. Later on in July, we'll work on a lot of the details, but in that aforementioned, maybe soon-to-be-named taco joint, Josh and I have discussed this ad nauseum for it seems like the last 3 months. We can get off the cliff. I guess me more so than you. You kind of talked me off the edge a bit, but finally have baseball, Josh. How stoked are you?
In spite of them shooting themselves in the foot and the hands and everywhere else other than maybe the head, they somehow got to this point, although... And to answer your question immediately, yes, I am stoked, and I'll say that I probably shouldn't be just the way they handled the whole thing, but I can't help myself because just a lifelong baseball fan, especially now that the team I root for is actually good. Then I'm pretty stoked, and I guess we'll get along to how poorly it was handled later. But another story that it's baseball time in Texas. Do you still have that clock I gave you a few years ago?
I do, actually. Yeah, I looked at that the other night.
We went to the Howard clan went to an Astros-Rangers game at the ballpark, and that was the giveaway. And, of course, Spring had no use for something that had Rangers on it, so you got a clock out of the thing, which, I think that ended up being like a 5-minute wait, so it was worth your time, or worth our time, worth for you.
Yeah, I in my mind, I think you're okay with me ragging on your daughter in this way. I don't think of it as Spring giving it to me. I think of you kind of getting it from Spring and then giving it to me. Would that be an accurate assumption of how I, in my mind, picture the events going with that little trinket?
Okay, well, Spring's number one thing is she wanted to get it so she could burn it. And so I said, well, that would be kind of rude. Like, if JP was in the different situation, he'd probably keep the Astros thing for us. And so reluctantly, she gave it to me to give to you instead of burning it. So however you want to classify that, I guess the gift from her is that she didn't actually bring it home and set fire to it in the backyard, which is possibly a good step forward in the terms of being a giving little happy helper of a kid.
Yeah, and for those that have not put 2 and 2 together, Josh, lifelong Astros fan before it was cool, way back then. and his daughter. He has passed down that fandom down through the lineage. And I've been a lifelong Rangers fan, for better or for worse. Yes, even after Game 6, it's been a tough one. But anywho, I thought we would break down not necessarily the labor side of things, but just how the deal came about and that it finally came about. And like Josh mentioned, just so many back and forths. What there had to have been in the teens, the number of proposals. It what started like 3 months ago, I think 12 weeks ago, but needless months of wrangling. Finally a deal between the owners and the Players Association. They get 100% prorated salaries. That was the huge sticking point all along. I think it went as far down as 74%, but eventually it's 100%, but it's only a 60-game schedule. That has its benefits that we'll talk about later on. But we were joking about this the other night, and you put it so succinctly that they rejected a 60-game proposal from the owners so that they could take a 60-game proposal with less money and less playoff shares is what it turned out to be. And the more I've studied it since our sarcastic back and forth, but the main thing is they want to have that grievance option. They have to keep it in or get it in court. And Evan Grant of the Dallas Morning News was saying that it could be up to $1 billion. So you really encouraged me in a lot of things, but here recently, sports-wise, I was kind of down on the mouth. I just said, nuke it all. I don't care. I hope there's no baseball season. I was just so angry with it, but finally we got it done. So thanks, one, for that positive side, and then the deal finally they came about. But why did it take so long to get here? In the end, I know it's money, or is that it? That's just it, right?
It's, 95% of it money, and more of it, the rest of it, the power in 2 years, whenever we get the strike or lockout that we can all look forward to, where we miss a good part of that year, not for coronavirus reasons. So, from the start, that's what it was. I mean, they could have started off at this point and said, okay, we'll do 60 or 70 games starting at such and such time, and this is what we're going with. But instead, you had the owner saying we're going to play 70 games at such and such, and the players saying, no, we're playing 100. And every time it was just so irrational on all parts. And I have a tendency to blame the owners a lot more than players, just because they're the billionaires. But by the time that it was over, there's not even half a winner in it, because they ended up neither side's happy. They're both kind of being forced to do something they don't want to do, which, in the end, it's a gain. It's what we want to watch. We understand that there's not any perfect solution. And like you said before, the most baseball thing ever to happen now would be in 2 weeks of the whole thing get nuked by the COVID situation. But as for now, they came through with a solution that, everybody's happy with. But at least we get baseball here in, what is it, a month from today, something like that? Somewhere we're close to it.
Yeah, I think, was it July 27th, 28th, maybe the 26th? Yeah.
The 23rd or the 24th is what.
So we're about a month out, and that lends to what they said all along. They needed about 3 weeks to get ready. This whole thing was postponed, for lack of a better term, in the middle of spring training. So they'll pick up kind of like a summer training. They'll be able to play, before I get onto that, and some of the details and the wacky new rules. I think the players come out looking great on this. Not that anybody's even watching baseball anymore besides us that are in that camp of being nerds and actually caring about and actually liking teams before they get into the World Series, like some fans are wont to do. But I think the players came off looking really good in this. And I think if they play it right, it's a big ask if they don't have the stoppage, the Armageddon that you just mentioned minutes ago. I think this could be a selling point to do things better with mic'd guys on the field, being more accessible, even more than they are. Because baseball, I think everybody mentions, rightfully so, is an easy third place as far as the marketing and kind of the Q rating with everything. So I think the owners look even more Scrooge McDuck than they possibly could, because they're counting their big pile of money and worrying about the tiny millions when they've got the billions. I know that's Captain Obvious and we both agree, but I just had to get that off my podcast chest there.
None of them look great right now. Like, I don't think the players just look really great, but the thing the players have going for them is when things get started, fans will have that. They'll be able to cheer on the players that they've missed for 3 or 4 months, the ones that are actually watching, which there'll still be plenty. So, the fans, when they're watching on TV predominantly, maybe a few in the stands, they get to go on and cheer on the players. They're not going to the place and saying, oh, Jim Crane hit a grand slam to win the game. It's, the player hit it. So you're cheering on the player. You're not cheering on the owner. So the owners aren't going to make themselves look any better from now on as opposed to anything, especially with the way they tend to make themselves look as terrible as possible. But at least when the players get out there, we're cheering on the players. You and I are cheering on the teams, but different people are cheering on their favorite players, like Trouts or whoever. So none of them look great right now. And I agree with you. The players do look better than the owners. But by the time it's all over and they get down to a product that's probably in the grand scheme going to be kind of fun because it's not your typical drawn out 162 games, then I think the players are going to look fine by the time it's all over, because there's actually going to be playing games, and us sports fans are going to watch, because we haven't had anything to watch for 3 or 4 months outside of The Last Dance. And so that'll give us some live events to watch.
Yeah, you said a lot there. One of the things I wanted to expand on was the schedule, is that it'll be 60-game schedule, 40 games against the division. So the Rangers and Astros in the AL West will be paired with, not surprisingly, the NL West. So, again, you corrected me on this last night, and I think I got the devil's always in the details, so I think I got the deets right. So 40 games against the AL West. So you've got Mariners, Athletics, A's, obviously Rangers, Astros. For the fandoms, I assume most listening here, either Rangers or Astros fans, you can't pick both, okay? Don't be a doofus and pick both, okay? You're one or the other. That's how it goes. But I like that. And I think the dirty secret is, how I am, Mr. Sports Armageddon anyway, and I want to blow a lot of things up and hit reset buttons. The schedule is too long in the NBA. The schedule is way too long in baseball. They'd say, oh, cut it to 154. No, cut it to 100. So this 60-game schedule, like, again, we have talked about in our duct tape seats at the third-rate taco joint a lot, is that this is going to be a mad sprint, and I love the fact, and hopefully baseball gets the drift. They won't, because the owners and the players both want more money, but they need to be playing less games anyway, ideally around 120, seriously. But 60-game schedule, I can't wait. Do college baseball in the full time, for those that don't know, voice of the Rice Owls. And there are a lot of similarities we could see, just the fervent nature of having a 60-game schedule. College is 56. Every game is going to matter, and that's going to be a beautiful thing. It'll be like watching almost 60 wildcard games going up into the postseason when that's finally settled.
Well, baseball's never going to come down from their 162 games whenever they can, because they want their money.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, if they do, it'll be like 8 or 10. Nothing close to the JP 100 game scale, which in the grand scheme, when you're actually watching the product on the field, probably would help. But it's just not going to happen. But for the short term, yes, a 60-game season where you don't just decide, the Astros are 8 games up on somebody and, oh, my finger's hurting, I'm going to go on the 15-day DL. So you lose somebody for something that's really not anything. And pitchers are going to have to go, stay pretty much on schedule. Basically, there's a big factor where you don't mail in certain parts of the season. You've got to totally go for it up till, even if you're really good, you're going to be in the last week or two before anything's clinched. So in terms of the product on the field, yes, I think it is going to be more entertaining to watch from a game-to-game standpoint, just because the games are going to mean so much more, especially, the first, usually the first month of the season. You get to April. If I remember correctly, the Rangers were a playoff team by about 50 games in last year.
Crazy.
And so if you get something like that, and if you get something like that, then you can get, not to be totally rude about it, but some fluke team gets in there, but you got to play it so much differently that I don't know how much the fluke will come in there. But it is baseball, so you get a team on a 9-game winning streak, and they're right there, even if they're some horrible team. But it's going to, as bad as I hate to admit it, just because we both agree that they've handled it so wrong that we should just walk away from it and be like, I'm done with it, which is kind of what you were thinking a couple weeks ago, which I kind of talked you off the edge of. When it starts, it's going to be a lot of fun for us diehards that are actually still watching and listening. Although the positives for it will be that the negatives for it, some of the not so diehard fans are going to be like, well, these idiots couldn't figure out how to make a schedule for 2 months while the rest of the world was dealing with everything else. And so that's my way of saying, yes, for actual baseball fans that are watching anyway, this is going to be a whole lot of fun with the whoever wins having that asterisk on the whatever. But I think any fan of a team would take it regardless. So I guess that's all I got to say.
Yeah, Josh is already predicting to paint the picture behind the scenes. We're not in person just yet. We should have recorded. Lisa, Mrs. Texas Porch, said y'all should have just recorded it over here. We will get up to doing that because I think we'll have more JP Josh duos or solos in the future. But Josh has World Series champs 17 for 2017 asterisk, and he's predicted a 2020 with an asterisk. Now, my Rangers joke, I could say, hey, why do you have the 2020 asterisk? Are they going to have more cheating, or do they have, of course, because of the shortened season? Anyway, sorry. I told myself coming in I would not take any low blows. But anyway, so it will be a 60-game schedule, 40 against your division across baseball. You're matched up with your opposite division in the other league. But this is amazing, and I think it's kind of been buried. I don't think this has gotten the notoriety, and maybe that's because of interleague play, but there will be a DH across both leagues for this season and next. Technically, it's not a permanent thing, but this makes my American League pants very happy because I have always disliked, even when we would always razz each other about our teams. And when I had the easy pot shots at you and the Astros were bad, and I'd say how bad NL baseball is from the respect of having a noodle bat 096 pitcher go up there and try to hit and inflate a bunch of ERAs across the National League. I can't wait. You actually have the DH across both leagues for the next 2 seasons.
I got to tell you, our friendship dates back to when the Astros weren't the cheating champions. They were the 51-win Astros playing in the National League with no DH. And at the time, I always told you the designated hitter is not great, that the natural baseball is, with the pitcher batting, until I got a good team in the American League that could use a DH.
Exactly.
I can't stand it when they're going against the National League team. And, they're, I guess more specifically now, they've got this Cuban crusher, Yordan Alvarez. He's a DH. And for 15 games of the schedule, you can't play because he doesn't have a position. So it's selfishly for the Astros case, that gets him in the lineup every single day, which is a bonus to me. And I'm telling you, for the DH sake, this is something for this year, next year. We've seen the DH is here to stay. That's the non-DH days. They're not coming back in 2 years. They're not going to be. There's not going to be pitchers batting after this. That's just. I don't think that's a hot take, but I think once they get this going, and from a player's perspective, that gives the extra position of the DH and more so. So whenever they go with the fiasco in a couple of years with all the talks that are going to come, that's just going to be a natural thing, is a universal DH for everybody. So for you specifically, that's always hated seeing pitchers batting, I don't think you have to worry about that anymore. And do you think there's any chance that they go back to pitchers batting even when this is all over? I just don't see it.
No, because it's extra jobs. And with the next labor agreement, they'll be after, I think, expanded rosters, meaning they want to have more DH. And you can, I mean, they have the DH already across the minor leagues, from my understanding. It's in college baseball. Every now and then you'll get a pitcher that can hit, but really rare even in college. When they're brought up even in the leagues you've been around in the past, I guess you get up more like Little League and the Pony League, whatever the other equivalents and elevations of those league is. So it just makes the most sense. And I am so against the baseball purist that thinks, oh, the DH is just sanctimonious. It cannot even compare to a pitcher hit, just the old wine and cheese guy that thinks he knows more baseball because he can explain the double switch. It's just awful. Tony La Russa, stick it, Tony La Russa. There's no more DH, and I like that. But another thing that is, hey, I have to stick with my bit. I'm up for tricking things up. Like I mentioned, cut the season in half, add the DH, and extra inning games. The extra innings, each inning will start with a runner on second base. So, yeah, about that. I'm not so sure about that. That is very, even as I was just making fun of the hottie purist, they want to speed up the game so much they should work on the pace. I mean, maybe doing it after the 11th or after the 12th inning, but I don't see why it has to start in the 10th inning. I
don't like it. I mean, I used to be a softball umpire, obviously, with being in high school, writing a lot of high school. Softball's done this for years. In general, I don't think it adds a whole lot of excitement for baseball because what they're wanting to get away from the purists like you were making fun of and putting a runner at second. What's that going to do? They're going to bunt him over to third and then try to hit the sacrifice fly. I mean, that's not, I mean, for people, people love the game. I can appreciate a sacrifice fly. I've been trying to tell my 11-year-old son, Cameron, if there's a runner at third, get him in. That's part of the game. But I don't think that's the part that they're going to, let's just say there's not going to be a highlight reel of leading into game 59 of the season where they say yesterday they got the bunt down and got them a sacrifice fly and the other team didn't. So I don't know what the solution is for that. I am kind of beyond regular season games that go 19 innings. I think those are borderline ridiculous for coaches to have to deal with, especially in the 162 game season where you got to use a pitcher for 6 innings and they get sent to the minors for the sole purpose of they need another arm. So I'm for doing different experiments, and maybe this will work. But at the same point, whenever they get back to 162 game season, if they've got this philosophy that the extra inning games are so terrible, just call it a tie after 10 innings. I know that's not a baseball. Yes. That's not the traditional baseball thing to say, but what's it going to, I mean, does it really matter that much if your team's 99, 54, and 7 as opposed to 101 and 61? So I don't know. I think I think that's going to be around the corner at some point. Go 10 or 11 innings. That's it. If you want to really trick it up, do something stupid like put a home run derby at the end to do like the hockey equivalent of a tie and an overtime or whatever. But just putting somebody at second in the 10th inning, I don't like it. But I think my way of talking for the last 2 minutes is say I don't have any real solutions other than I would say just go with a tie after 10 or 11 if you want to put an arbitrary 12-inning number, because the 19-inning games, as much as I like watching baseball at 2 o'clock in the morning, I think I'm one of maybe about 7 people in the world that actually like that. So, yeah, just go. My solution is just go ties.
So there'll also be a 60-man roster pool. They'll have taxi squads. And the way I read it, and the aforementioned Mr. Grant, the beat writer for the Rangers, the Dallas Morning News, said that there'll be a taxi squad, and it's basically an extended, like they used to have the extended spring training. They'll just have scrimmages against each other, and you'll have an extra allotment of players because inevitably somebody goes on the DL. What I haven't seen is if that DL remains the same or if it's reduced, because they have tinkered with the DL in the last few seasons. But so how about our specific teams? Josh, you're the guest. It's our podcast together, but just for the sake of me pretending to be nice, let's talk about the Astros, and we'll have other conversations. This is not the end of any Astros talk. And very relieved that we don't have to talk about a stupid virus today. And I know Josh, my partner tonight, is more relieved than I am. But the obvious first question, I promise, Scout's honor, I'm not crossing my fingers, Scout's honor. Will everything that happened with the coronavirus, the delay, not starting foolishly until the end of July, does that help the Astros, or did that exacerbate teams coming after the Astros even more? Because obviously, if we started this thing in late March or early April, Astros were target number one, and that would have been fascinating for me to watch. Maybe not so much you, for the record hit by pitches that the Astros batters would suffer. So I don't know, like, where do you stand as the Astros diehard that you are in thinking how other teams will still have it out for the Astros or not with everything that's happened? And then with the 60-game season to boot, I might think, to try to jump in and answer my own question as I interrupt you already. With the shortened season, maybe that prevents some of that because you'll have a smaller schedule of games that you can't afford to be suspended with.
That's kind of where I was going to start with it, is the shorter schedule of games makes it a little bit tougher to just go hit everybody, because if you got the 162-game season, not a big deal for somebody to be suspended for 5 games for hitting somebody. But under a 60-game season, you don't want to lose a starting pitcher or a reliever for a certain amount of time to lose a good portion of the season. So I think that'll curtail a little bit. I think the main thing will be they don't have to deal with, even if there are fans, I don't think there's going to be just packed out places. So that'll die down maybe a little bit. The players are still going to hate them. The players from other teams have been talking about it for, obviously, I hadn't talked about it the last couple months because I'm sure they've been talking about it for themselves, but just the optics of, stuff that actually matters in the world. So it's going to happen, but I don't think it's going to be quite as bad. I think it's going to get what's going to happen, I would guess, is they'll get into, game 2 or 3 where nobody mentions a whole lot about it. And then Springer will get hit in the helmet or something. And then it'll bring it up. Oh yeah, we don't like these guys. And let's let them know about it a little bit. And then whenever the season actually starts, assuming that everything's going as it is, when you're actually focused on a baseball season, then that's when the retaliation and all that will come up, and all the fun baseball stuff of bench clearing brawls or something. Of course, what's a bench clearing brawl going to look like when they're supposed to be socially distancing? So I don't know what's going to be the protocols on all of that, where, that was the thing that they were going to get hit and there was going to be these fights, but as part of the protocols of if they go out swinging at each other, that can't be good for the optics of dealing with the coronavirus either. So basically dancing around. I've got no idea. I would guess in the second or third game, somebody's going to get hit, and somebody's going to get hit once every 4 or 5 games or something. And it's just going to be a matter of, did they do it on purpose or not? They never can say if they did it on purpose, just because of the suspension thing. So it'll be fun to watch, even as an Astro fan, just seeing how it all gets handled and how the Astros respond to it, because they've got some guys like Alex Bregman that I think is just going to thrive on it. Like, I should be careful about how I say it. The basic FU of, we did it, we won, and I'm still here, and I'm still going to hit 330 and be an MVP candidate. But so I know he'll handle it well. I know guys like Verlander, Greinke, they just don't care. Mm-hmm. Greinke doesn't care about anything. So it'll be fun to watch whenever it gets going, and that storyline's going to come across. I just don't know if it's going to be as big as it would have been in a regular season, where teams have to deal with the fact of they don't want to be suspended for, all the games are going to mean a lot more because they're division games, or 2/3 of them are division games. So I think it's going to be there, and we'll just have to wait and see exactly how bad it is. And not defending the Astros, but it's going to be there.
Yeah, I totally agree that it will be there, and you hit the code name there. It's definitely Bregman. He came across, at least to me, as the biggest D-bag on the team. And even though I respect the heck out of him, I think he is just amazing. He comes across as the most targeted guy, if there is one, with the Astros. But so the number one issue for the Astros, again, there will be other minutia we get into, of course, as the season goes on, we'd like to have another more in-depth baseball preview, but losing Garrett Cole, it was kind of writing on the wall. You knew the Astros probably wouldn't keep him, especially having Verlander and Greinke, that, of course, they would make their offer. And I forget specifically, maybe you being Mr. Numbers and Mr. Astros, a good combination. Remember that contract offer to Cole, but doesn't seem like McCullers will be back to his old ways, back in time. I might be wrong on that, but losing Cole, it doesn't sting as much as it would for other teams, but having the best pitcher in the game out of your rotation for the last year and a half at least, and now he's at the Evil Empire, that's got to hurt a little bit, right? Or is that lessened in a season like this, though we've already talked backwards and forwards, that some of that might not mean as much because you just don't have as many games, so Verlander and Greinke can be emphasized, and you do get Urquidy, or you do get Josh James play a little bit pitch back to what he was a year and two ago. So how do you see the rotation losing Cole, and if McCullers can come back?
There's no way around it. Cole, I mean, you lose the best pitcher in the majors for easily last year, although Verlander was right up there with him. But Cole was the guy you didn't want to see if you're an opponent. So that's tough, and not so much even the 60-game season. But once they get to the playoffs and you need the three really good pitchers, that's where it will come down. Where the short season is going to help him is going to be McCullers, because McCullers is potentially a great pitcher, and he was going to be on a innings limit this year. And so now the innings limit, he's not going to hit the innings limit in 60 games. So that will help you with a number 3 starter, because he is, in my opinion, he's that good. I mean, he's definitely no Verlander or Greinke, but he's definitely not a Cole, but he's going to be better than almost any number 3 pitcher in the league. And the biggest question will be getting those 4th and 5th guys. Urquidy is a potential. I mean, he was great in a playoff game against the Yankees. He's shown flashes. He doesn't have the overpowering stuff. He's good for a number 4 guy. And after that, number 5, I don't know what they're you said Josh James. That's a possibility. If you want to do Forrest Whitley, he's probably not quite there yet in terms of the youngster. So those are the 2 main things, because the lineup's good. Lineup's really good. The bullpen, okay, they should be pretty good there, but they're definitely at least one starter short of where they would like to be. Although it's kind of problems of sounding cocky or problems of really good teams, because they've got 3 pitchers that would probably be, if not an ace, then number 2 on other teams. The 2 there definitely would be aces on almost anybody in the league. So, get that extra starter. And like I say, I know sound like cocky Astro fan and ridiculous, but 10 years ago or 7 years ago, I would have seen this roster and said, let's go home right now. We'll take whatever we get. But now that's a starting pitcher will be the one thing they need. And the trade deadline's August 1st August 31st?
Yeah, they moved it back to the 31st. Yeah, because of everything.
And that's the other thing. I don't know what the trade deadline's going to be like, if you can legitimately get some kind of starter in there, because the trade deadlines, nobody's going to be more than 5 or 6 games out of the playoff picture at that point. So do people really want to sell somebody that they convince themselves they're not a playoff team? And I have no idea the optics of exactly how all that works. You have to, I don't know, but they could potentially trade for one, although I have absolutely no idea how that's going to work right now. But that would be the one glaring thing you can look at the roster and say, yes, they do need.
They do have, you're wondering about the other guys in the rotation. And if McCullers doesn't come back to like close to he was, and you can't expect that, even the most critical person against the Astros, I could be in that category sometimes, but I try to be reasonable as well. I mean, Austin Pruitt is one option. Saw he was signed, a former Houston Cougar. He was signed in the offseason coming from Tampa Bay, and Framber Valdez. I don't know anything about Framber Valdez, but that's just some of the scuttlebutt I see on the Astros rotation side.
Say Framber Valdez isn't a great option, but he's there.
Yeah.
I've seen him pitch. He's kind of a stopgap. He could be a number 5 that could go 7 innings of 1-run ball, but usually he's going to go 5 innings of giving up 5 runs. But yeah, those are 2 options in Pruitt. He'd be more of a potential than the other ones, I would guess.
So on the Rangers side of things, you referenced this earlier, and I forgot to kind of spit this back at you, but it was 32-28 through 60 games last year. The Rangers would have gotten the second wild card, but Chris Woodard's second season as Rangers manager, I saw no reasons to not like him. Players seemed to love him. Bannister, it seemed pretty forced, and the more you heard after Bannister was surprisingly let go after everything that happened after the 18 season, he didn't rub a lot of people the right way. He was not a good clubhouse manager at all. He was very prickly and just did not have fans on the roster, and that's a big problem. Even though this age of baseball, really, it's the numbers game, and it seems like the general manager is handing the spreadsheet to the manager anyway. But the Rangers should have a formidable rotation. Again, I think third time we'll send him a gift card. But Evan Grant, I read something that he wrote about with the Rangers rotation that they have. They've got highlights in the lineup, obviously with Gallo, elder Elvis Andrus, the worst player in baseball, Rougned Odor. I can't wait for Nick Solak to take Rougned Odor's spot at second base. But Solak, they're talking about playing him in the outfield now too. But anyway, I started that rant off on talking about the Rangers rotation, but they added Corey Kluber in the offseason. They had Mike Minor, such a wonderful year last year. Lance Lynn was retained, and they got Kyle Gibson from the Twins. And Jordan Lyles, Josh, am I misremembering that? Am I remembering Jordan Lyles as an Astro when he was not an Astro?
Jordan Lyles was an Astro
back
when they were terrible. He was like
That's right.
He was probably the ace of the 111 loss team, I would guess.
That's right.
But he's not bad, but actually the names you said on that staff aren't bad. And he's going to be a good back end of the rotation guy, I would think, because he's been pretty decent. He's decent with the Astros years ago, but
he was 5-12 in 2012, 2-8 in 2011. Before that, let's see, a full season's starts. Here's his. Okay, I mentioned 2012. He was 5-12, so he started 25 games. Usually that's around now. Not now in the 60-game schedule, but way back in the Stone Age of 162 games. He was 7-9 with the Astros in 2013. So then he got, I don't know if he signed with the Rockies or got traded there, but things picked up a little bit with the Rockies. But fitting in perfectly, going back 2 ballparks for the Rangers. But Lyles fits in perfectly with his 5.11 career ERA. So that, hey, all my 1990s and heck 2000s, really leading up to about 08-09 when the Rangers started turning things around in a really good way. Shout out to the 5.11 ERA. But the rotation should be very formidable, and I don't pretend that you've studied it backwards and forwards. But in a short season like we're going to have, I mean, starting pitching could make all the difference. I don't know if Kluber is back to his 2 Cy Young Award frame. I mean, there's a reason they got rid of him at Cleveland for what seemed like a really small price that the Indians had to pay. What draft pick, and I'm blanking on the name of the left-handed reliever that the Rangers gave up on him now for him. But, I mean, so you're telling me there's a chance, to quote one of the great movies of all time. I don't know if Lloyd or Harry said that, Dumb and Dumber, but I'm happy. With the short season, I'll be interested. I'll be very invested in every game, but having a rotation like that should make Rangers fans pretty happy.
Kluber, that might help you guys in a short schedule, because I think durability was one of his biggest issues. And so just getting that sprint of, you're only going to have 12 starts in the season, 13 at the most probably. Having him in there, that probably helps. And I liked Minor and Lynn both last year. That seemed like they were both really good. And you're talking about Lyles, that 7-9 season for the 2013 Astros. I bet that did make him an ace on the team because they were outright terrible. But yeah, put those top three guys. I don't hate it. I kind of like it for them because they should be able to keep them in some games because those guys usually, even on bad days, don't just go out there and get shelled. So if you have guys that go 6 or 7 innings, get 4 runs, even if they don't have the dominant stuff, which Minor on occasion did, Lynn at times did. Not trying to be a Ranger expert, but that seems not so bad, especially in a short season where you can kind of piece it together with the other spots. Like I said, I don't think Lyles is a bad number 4 or 5 pitcher to go out there. He's definitely serviceable. It's not just some trash that I've seen the Rangers put out the last couple of years.
Yeah, Kluber was, and I'd even expand it more than that, more than the last couple of years. But Kluber's 98 and 58 his career. Unlike Lyles, he's got an ERA 2 runs better, 3.16 earned run average. He's a big ground ball pitcher, and who knows if that helps or not in the new park. We'll see how that plays. It's supposed to be a pretty pitcher-friendly park that will finally open, but Kluber won 2 Cy Young awards. He's bona fide. He's got the bona fides, but can he get back to what he was? And Lynn, you referenced him a couple of times there. He was an SOB, man. He could get after guys, and he's also, this is crazy, he's also won 98 games in his career like Corey Kluber has, but he was a big welcome addition last year. Won 16 games. That was his most since he pitched for the Cardinals. 2012, he pitched for the Cardinals. Was also on that 2011 team, but really like the top of that Rangers rotation. But in the lineup, I mean, they'll have Gallo, which is obviously he's morphed into one of the better power hitters, but the book on Gallo has obviously been the strikeouts. He hasn't been able to round out his game. Like I said, I don't remember all the dimensions, and assuming that, I mean, power is power, he'll suit really well in that ballpark. But I mean, he's just got to cut down on his strikeouts, and I mean, hit 250. Just hit 240, kind of be an Adam Dunn. He could be Adam Dunn with even a little more pop. But my gosh, strikeouts. He did cut down the strikeouts now that I look at his year-by-year approach. He had 196 in 17, 207 in 2018, and he had 114 strikeouts last year. But remember, he had that, was it a thumb injury? He had some kind of arm injury. But his average was 253 last year. It was only for 70 games, but it seemed like he flattened out his stroke a little bit. But he's still a 212 career hitter. But he was on pace last year to have his 3rd straight 40 home run season. That's the coin of the realm now. But Gallo's the guy other teams would like to get. They've got him for a couple more years before arbitration. You like to see him get locked up for a long time because he's one of those keystones that they really desperately need for the Rangers to not only with the ballpark, but they have to have that star of the future. And Gallo's an athlete, and I think he could be that guy for them.
I really liked what I saw from Gallo last year before he got hurt. I could be having selective memory, but it seemed like around May when they were still doing pretty decently, it seemed like his average wasn't terrible. Like you said, his strikeouts were somewhat down, although you can't really tell with how much he was hurt. But it seemed like before he was hurt, he was a lot more dangerous hitter. Like the couple of years before that, I didn't mind at all when he came to play against the Astros. So I'm like, for the season, he's going to hit 1 homer and strike out 37 times. Yeah. Last year, he's going to hit 5 homers and strike out 20 times. You would have seen him all year. So maybe that's my selective watching him. But it seemed like he was starting to turn the corner a little bit more. And like you said, if he can bat 250 like he did last year with 40 homers, you take that for anybody. And, that's good to put in the middle of your lineup, as long as he's not striking out 230 times or whatever it is where you can really pitch around him. Because it seemed like the problem he had specifically, maybe even a little bit last year, which it's not singular to him. If the Astros had a number 4 starter on the mound, he was pretty dangerous. If they had their number 1 or 2 guy, he was going to strike out. He wasn't going to put the ball in play. So if you knew how to pitch him, then he wasn't a problem. But maybe I'm having selective memory, but it seemed like he was starting to turn the corner a little bit more last year on being a little bit more complete of a hitter, as opposed to just 35 homers and all the strikeouts that went along with it.
No selective memory on your part. You summed it up nicely there, but you just didn't have the time before that injury. He played not even half as many games as he had in the year before, but his OPS went up 140 points. His slugging percentage was up 100 points, like 90 points above his career average, and his on-base percentage went up 90 points from the season before, and about, 60 points above his career average. So, again, seem to be grasping it, and they're talking about maybe Solak. They got Santana as an option in the outfield. Obviously, Calhoun finally will be an everyday player. He's kind of been yo-yoed. That's one thing I don't think the Rangers have done a good job. They've yo-yoed guys too much throughout the last, maybe an ultra picky on my part, the years when they're not as talented, but they seem to be moving guys around instead of letting. And Gallo's another example, just like Calhoun, that they didn't just, they tried to groom him at first and then the third, and then, I guess anybody could play first, but seems like he's got that down in right field now, but he'll probably play some center at some times too. But the other big thing is, unless everything worsens, and I know you're Mr. COVID expert, but it seems like Texas, along with Florida, we're not trending in the best of ways with this pesky COVID-19 virus. But Texas fans at pro sporting events, Governor Abbott has said they can make 50% capacity. Hooray, finally, at Globe Life Field. Season ticket holders get the first crack, but I'd love to take the dad, or even you, Mr. Havard, on a trip. Sorry, the dad gets the first right of refusal there, but you don't, I know you will care to go to an Astros game because you go to a 10-12 a year, and I'll try to go to 5 or 6 Rangers games a year. It's a little farther trip from where we are to going to the Globe Life Field. But I can't wait. I'd love to go. Worldwide pandemic be danged. Just kind of depends on our pesky neighbors there. Wearing masks, no, that's up for debate if it even helps or not. But looks like what Governor Abbott said, that we'll be able to actually go see a game. I guess only really 30 opportunities. And if season ticket holders fork over some tickets, you'll get to be in the Astros that they were 13,000 fans they were listing back, and you were actually one of those on some nights back then. But for the Rangers,
social
it'll be
distance wasn't a problem that many
no,
years ago.
You could socially distance yourself those old Astros games wherever you wanted. But Globe Life Field will host about 20,000. The new capacity is a little over 40. So what do you say? Want to catch a game? I need to know right now.
If all goes well, then yes. Although not being the COVID guy, the numbers you're talking about aren't trending towards a thing where we can all go see a game. But yes, count me in. If we're allowed, I'll even wear a mask out there to the game we can go to, which will be at least it's not outside, because I would not go outside in Arlington for 3.5 hours wearing a mask because I would die. But now that it's air conditioning. If we're allowed, count me in. I'll go to the second one whenever your dad's not there. Maybe we can pick one of the Astros ones if they're available.
Oh, we're all over it. Let's do it right now. All right, folks. What the folks have long been waiting for this week in Texas sports and history. All right, Josh, since you seem to be Mr. Memory and a lot of things, by the way, sometime we need to get Josh's full talents on multiplication and addition with crazy figures. He's got a Rainman-like ability there. 513 times 12. Go.
6,144.
Boom. I didn't check it. Is that right?
I've got no idea. You threw me off because I was just about to make the joke of, yes, that's exactly what people want to hear on a podcast, is throwing out numbers and multiplication and go Rainman style. That would be the ultimate podcast. Let's do that for an hour to see if anybody actually listens. We'll see We'll see who your real friends are. We'll see who my real friends are. Because if more than 3 people listen, then that would be doing something. But yeah, that's definitely podcast gold right there.
As long as we're having fun. But on this date in Texas sports history, the San Antonio Spurs won their first NBA title, Game 5 over the Knicks. Shortened season. They became the first of the ABA teams to win a title.
Wasn't that the one that Phil Jackson put the asterisk all over for him?
Yeah. We could have come back. We would have won it.
I was pretty sure that was what was being unsaid around the league was the asterisk, and Phil Jackson. Of course, he was, in the midst of winning all those titles as well, but he just flat out came out and said it. But yeah, that was the Spurs over Allen Houston and Latrell Sprewell, and I think the Knicks were a 8 seed that year. But yeah, that's probably more knowledge than I remember with the Spurs. But I remember watching it, and that wasn't necessarily watching them play the Knicks, or not the Knicks, but the Nets. But still, both you and I share the same feelings.
June 25th of 1957, Tillman Fertitta was born in Galveston. Restaurateur and Cougar supporter and NBA owner. Did I get that in the right order, or would you flip that around? Is he known? What is he known more for?
Now, I would guess he's more known as the Rockets owner.
Yeah, probably so.
But I'm not sure which exact direction. Maybe if they won a title in this, maybe if they get their asterisk title, then he'd definitely be the Rockets person. But he definitely made his money before the Rockets with his other venture. So he'd probably put it the opposite order. And the Cougars arena is named after him, isn't it?
Yeah, Fertitta Center. And he's
that's what
their,
I was thinking. So
yeah, he's their big gun. He's done so many things, propelling the Cougars even more as if they needed it, but kind of giving them that rebirth athletically with his support. But birdies tell me, I cannot reveal my sources, but maybe this is common knowledge, and I think I'm revealing something secretive that I know. But him being from Galveston, he has explored the opportunity of having gambling in Texas, and he has land scattered out for different casinos down in his birth town in Galveston. So I think there's a lot of stuff above our head that we don't know how that works, Josh. We don't know how any of that works.
We don't. What I do know is he likes money, and Texans like gambling. So I would not be surprised by any of that. And I guarantee if he opens up something and it's legal, he is going to make a killing off of it.
But as far as I know, he's got the Golden Nugget over there in Lake Charles too, so he didn't want to go again. Maybe that's over, and I'm reporting old news. That'd be like me and like this podcast to report something from 2012, thinking I have an inside scoop.
That'd be great. I've got no idea. I hadn't heard of any of that. But
okay,
that would be awesome if you just found out.
You do work at a newspaper.
Yes, in 2011, JP would have been well ahead of the curve.
All right. June 20. Got to skip ahead here. Here's another one. Friday, Texas sports history. June 26, 2002. Yao Ming was picked number 1 by the Rockets. One of the more underrated big men in NBA history. Obviously, if he could have played 5 or 6 more seasons, I think he gets a lot more respect. But he was the first, and my sports consciousness didn't really register Ralph Sampson so much, but Yao Ming, the one freakishly tall guy and George Mirasan was like that, I guess, too. But you got to remember, I've got the bitter Sean Bradley memories of him getting dunked on by every 6'2" guard, like Robert Pack. I guess Tracy McGrady's not a 6'2" guard, but that famous poster. But anyway, my long-winded way to say Yao Ming, what a ball player. Way to go, Yao.
Hey, I liked it. You being a Mavericks fan, I thought you were going to go the other way and say the overrated part, because a lot of people don't want to give him the credit. He was a really, really good center. Like, not an all-time great, but man, he was good. And I don't think he gets a lot of the credit, and he's definitely no George Mirasan or anything. Sean Bradley is actually a decent player for what he was worth. But Yao Ming was definitely no Sean Bradley either. He was a lot better than that. And in the grand scheme of, obviously Hakeem is the the gold standard for big men, specifically in Houston, and with the exception of a couple, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell. He's up there. Yao Ming's obviously not in that class, but definitely had a great career.
Yeah, and I guess
cut short by injury.
I guess big guys like 7'4" and above. You've got Mark Eaton, you've got Ralph Sampson, you've got George Murison, Sean Bradley, and the fifth one being Yao Ming. I mean, he's second, or I'm not saying he's the second best big guy ever, but among that freakishly tall, I know this is a whole separate conversation I'm straying into. I just think props to Yao Ming, and I think I rose in your eyes by giving the Rockets some credit. But I like the Rockets. I don't have the same thing as I do for the Astros. It's weird. Okay, on this week in Texas history, June 27th, 1914, Saturday, Galveston native Jack Johnson defeats Frank the Fighting Dentist Moran for the heavyweight title. Is that an imposing nickname, the Fighting Dentist?
The Fighting Dentist. What was Jack Johnson's nickname?
Galveston Giant, I believe.
What is it?
The Galveston Giant? Is that right?
Oh, okay. That doesn't ring a bell.
Okay.
I'm not necessarily the boxing historian, but
because I am, right?
For him. Yeah, that'd be definitely a question between the two of us, although
yeah.
I know a little bit of history on it, but just the big names for the most part.
Yeah, he's come up a few times recently. I think he's coming up later on too. But Galveston Giant, he was the first African-American world heavyweight boxing champ. We were talking, I beg your pardon, really good friend Josh. I forget if you're on that episode when he came up before, but you talk about great Texas athletes. He's got to be in the top 5 that have ever come out of our great Lone Star State. June 27th, 1973, phenom David Clyde made his debut with the Rangers 3 weeks after winning a state title at Westchester High School in Houston. One of the all-time mess-ups by a franchise, one of the biggest disservices, bringing up a guy not even a month after his high school career was over. David Clyde.
I read Seasons in Hell, which had a few pages dedicated to David Clyde. That's some pretty good stories in it, but I couldn't do justice to right now. It's been a while since I read the book. But yeah, one of the most mismanaged players ever that probably could have had a lot better story. I mean, it might not have been a better story. The story is pretty good, but a much more successful story if he was handled the proper way, as 99.9% of other athletes or star pitchers are in the world today.
So, big sports day on Sunday, June 28th of 2007, Craig Biggio notched his 3,000th career hit.
There you go. He got thrown out at second.
That's number 3,000, and he drives in a run, and he's going for second. Tavares with the throw. He's out, but that's 3,000 hits for Craig Biggio.
Way to talk over the sound, Josh.
It ties the ball game. He arrived 20 years ago from Smithtown, New York, with Texas-sized dreams.
I didn't realize I had that queued up. You need to restart it again.
No, and you keep talking over it, but I did too. So,
against Milwaukee.
Thanks a lot, Bill Brown. Appreciate it. Josh just stomping all over your call. My fault. I didn't give you any kind of cue there, but he had 5 hits that day. And do you remember who they were playing? As we've already established, you are the opinion maker of record for the Astros. Who were the Astros playing that day? And Biggio got his 3,000th hit.
It's the Rockies?
It was Colorado Rockies. Okay. Yes, indeed.
Thought it was. Any more anticlimactic way of getting thrown out at second when trying to stretch it to a double? So you go right back to the dugout. I like the call there. He's like, and he's going for second. He's out.
He's out.
It's like, all right.
And then that's a great Bill Brown. Then he gets into, you could tell he had an idea of what he wanted the call to be. He'd been thinking about it for a while. And he didn't know how to frame it in there with him being out on a hit, which doesn't happen too often. But the aforementioned Ralph Sampson, this week in Texas sports history, June 28th of 83, Rockets drafted him number 1 pick in the NBA draft. He was pretty good. He was not too bad. June 28th of 1919, in Texas history, the Texas Senate ratified the National Amendment granting women the right to vote. Texas thus became the first southern state to ratify the 19th Amendment and the 9th state in the nation. Any thoughts on
that?
That was 1919. Isn't it crazy?
So Texas was ahead of the curve in something like that.
Yeah. 101 years ago. This week in Texas history, Tuesday, June 30th of 1922, legendary Texas fiddler Alexander Eck Robertson, along with fiddler Henry C. Gilead, made what most country music historians consider the first commercial recordings of country music. Name that song, Josh Havard.
It's only gotten worse since then.
No, it's not Luke Bryan. No.
Do you know the actual name of the song?
Only because I did the research, and it's kind of my podcast, so to speak. But the duets included Arkansas Traveler, and this is Turkey in the Straw.
Was made of wood. Her hair was false and her teeth was too, and there wasn't much for me to do. Turkey in the straw, a turkey in the hay, a turkey in the straw. What did you say? Hey, rolling, twisting up behind.
That'd be a good remix these days, right?
What does turkey in the straw mean? Like, I'm trying to grasp my head around what metaphor or what that is, but a turkey in the straw.
I don't know.
Is it like wild turkey?
I guess.
Like the alcohol? I mean, maybe that's it.
Listeners should know that about 16 years into our friendship, it was a year or two ago, I asked Josh, hey, what kind of music do you like? Because we never talk about music. And
we've made so many road trips together and just don't listen to music as well.
It's not our number one thing. I don't have this overwhelming. I'm not a musician outside of playing the trumpet in Commerce Middle School in the late 80s, early 90s. So yeah, Josh and I, not the most musically inclined, but I had to give the shout out to Turkey in the Straw there. All right, finally, this week in Texas sports history, July 1st of 2012, TCU joined the Big 12 Conference. That was I almost said franchise, almost like it is, but that was a program that really earned its way up the pecking order with all the crisscrossing around with Conference USA and I guess Mountain West for a time too, right? And then Big East, and then eventually, then Mountain West, I guess, and then moving up to the Big 12.
And they've earned it since they've been there, while Texas and A&M still yell at each other about who's the most average and not great. TCU's put together better seasons than either one of them on a much more consistent basis. And this comes from sitting in a burnt orange shirt, but they've got it going along pretty well where, when they finally have an 8 period, like everybody's like, what's wrong with them? So that they definitely got that chance and made the most of it.
All right, Josh, pat ourselves on the back. We did a good job tonight. We're without the guys, but finally the show that the public was demanding. The Josh and JP Texas Porch Extravaganza. Good job, sir.
The Josh and JP solo show.
Yeah, I don't know what else we could call it. I will see you tomorrow because it is Taco Special Day at the Third Rate Taco Joint with duct tape on the seats. Okay.
Oh, yes, you will. I'll plan it out. I'll work it around my 17 stops that I've got to do tomorrow. Driving along people.
Josh is
we'll make it happen.
Josh is a combination of a bus boy, a taxi driver, and a courier all in one. And he's an amazing dad and husband for doing everything he does. But all right, brother, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, JP.
Yeah, the TexasPorch.com. You get your episodes on that Mitch-designed website. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, Texas Porch Pod. Have a great rest of this day or night. God bless you. And you know what? God bless Texas. We'll talk to you next week out on the Texas Porch. Say sports, Josh.
Sports.
Yeah, I was like, I better go poop now.